Greetings, fellow traveler, on this little rock tumbling through space. I'm Fred. This is my front porch. Come and sit a bit, and let's talk for a little while. There are ideas to be discussed on this old set of nicely nailed together boards. Philosophy, meditation, and changing the world. Fred's Front Porch is honored to welcome Josh Bachynski, a PhD in neuroscience, a TED Talks speaker on the topic of Google, and a meditation specialist. He's a scientist and a philosopher, and he stopped by the porch to discuss how we seek the good. This is a deeper and more general conversation than you're used to hearing on the old front porch. So what is the good? This is a difficult concept to grasp, yet it's essential in driving our lives. We'll delve into that. Descartes and the idea of I think, therefore I am, and that all of this is an illusion is also worth considering. So we do. How do we solve moral problems? How does one decide between conflicting goods? We'll get into that. Josh, an expert in meditation, runs us through a brief example of a serious experience of it. He'll show us how to spin the clouds. My microphone didn't give me the performance on Zencastr that I had hoped. I apologize for my muddy sound. It will get better. So now, let's meet Josh.
For the introductions, I have a master's degree and PhD, ABD in neuroscience, psychology, and philosophy from York University. To tell you the truth, I don't know a lot of the people who are doing the meditation right now. I don't know a lot of the landscape. I'm just kind of starting to get into it. It's like I kind of went into a cave. And like my Sufistic mentors, some of them, I've gone into a cave like Al Ghazali, and I've been there for 1,000 years, and now I'm coming out going, hello world. And I have really no idea who's saying what or who's doing what when it comes to meditation. I've studied, of course, a lot of neuroscience, some psychology, and a lot of philosophy, mostly philosophy. And the reason why I have a tie into Google is because that's how I pay the bills. Nobody pays any philosophers for anything, sadly.
Yes, this I knew. Yes.
Yeah, as even old Socrates lamented back in the day.
Yes.
So how I pay the bills is by doing search engine optimization. So I reverse engineer Google's algorithms. And I have a private mentorship group, which people pay me for those secrets. But that's not my passion. That's what's putting food on the table, but that's not my passion. My passion is meditation and philosophy, and trying again to fix the world as we talked about. That is definitely broken.
All right, now the philosophy thing is interesting to me. My father taught philosophy of education for 35, 40 years, something like that. And I'm actually named after Friedrich Nietzsche, so I have a little bit. Although Dad was an existentialist when I was born, and he was pissed as hell at the existentialists before I died. So, or before he died, I'm not quite dead yet, but he,
right.
So I have, a bit of the existentialist shit in me, and I like the idea of choosing for every man and all of that. And I'll buy into a certain amount of life is absurd, in that it can be. On the other hand, I also don't think you can go very far with that, in the same way that I have friends that, want to tell me that, it's all a matrix and it's all control. If everything is all controlled by someone else, you know what? I can't do anything about that. And so why do I care?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people, we must be in some kind of simulation, or, the chances they think, and this doesn't follow at all, but they think the statistical chances that we're in some kind of simulation must be, high, if not impossibly not possible, right?
Right.
But the
Yes.
answer is, okay, well, so what? Fine. So as long as the simulation is relatively consistent, and it is,
Yeah.
then it doesn't really matter at that point.
Well, and I don't believe there's anything I could do about it. I mean, okay, so, and I mean, what was that? Descartes, right? I think, therefore, I am. For all I know, this could all be a madman's dream, and I could not exist at all. And that the body that I believe I have, you're an illusion. This microphone's an illusion. It's all an illusion. The only thing of which I can be sure is that there must be some form of me alive to experience all of this illusion. I think,
Right.
therefore I am. Okay.
Right.
But what difference does it make? This is still the reality with which I have to live. And maybe it is, maybe none of this exists, but it doesn't matter. I have to work with what is, as far as I can tell. So,
Exactly. And it's so interesting you mentioned that, because that's a lot where my meditation picks up and my philosophy picks up from Descartes. And you're right. It doesn't matter if this is an illusion or not. At the end of the day, pain hurts.
yes, it does.
That cannot be denied. You can try and deny it all you like while you're feeling it, but
Yes.
that's only going to get you so far, right? And the good is good. Pleasant things are pleasant. What you like is what you like. And so I think the basis, all of the postmodern speculations as to the authenticity of reality and the value of said authenticity is completely and utterly moot. And I'm afraid your namesake is largely to blame there in some
No,
major
yeah.
ways, in trying to trick us into thinking that was important to begin with. It comes back to Plato, sadly, for people who deny it. Happily for everybody else, it comes
Yeah.
back to Plato, in that the good is the good, and we need to seek the good, and that's central to all of to my movement. That's central to we're called the BAMers. BAM stands for Bach meditation. It's the meditation style and philosophy that I've kind of developed over the years, which was blending Eastern and Western meditation together. And the BAMR movement is seeking the good and trying to optimize optimality in the most scientific sense, but in all branches, in politics and in philosophy and education and business,
Okay.
because the good is good. And there's no other reason. We need no other outside imperative to do it.
Okay, great. Now that brings up the first obvious question. How does one decide what is good?
Right. So it's surprisingly simple. The good is maximal positivity. It's optimal optimality. It's the concept of maximal positivity that can't get any better. It can't get any gooder. It's in Plato's book, The Republic, in Book 7, the cave metaphor. The good was represented by the sun. And I don't know if you remember The Republic very well, but the philosopher kind of drags the student up, kicking and screaming, through, despite their moral indignation of what wokeisms they've been trained with, or on whichever side, the right or the left side, whichever tribe they're in, right, currently.
Right.
And despite their the boards of habituation, their habits to look at certain problems certain ways, with certain moralisms they've been trained with, the philosopher drags them up and goes past the representation of the images of the good that everybody thinks they have, like money, sex, fame, some
Right.
good things, but they're what makes them all good to begin with. They all participate in this overarching positivity. They all participate to the degree that they are good. They all
Right.
participate in some way to this overarching positivity, this overarching likeness. There's something likable about them. And the most likable likeness is the concept we're talking about. It's the pure product. And in the cave metaphor, it was the sun was the image, and you turn your eyes to it, and Plato says, once you turn your eyes to it, it burns an image in your eyes, and you have to look away. But then when you're outside of the cave, you can become accustomed. You're no longer a cave dweller, and this is the kind of enlightenment that we're trying to seek in the BAMR movement.
Okay.
This is the kind of enlightenment that we're trying to seek, of living in the realm of the good, living outside the cave. And it's a lot like The Matrix, and the Wachowskis are very intelligent filmmakers, for those of you who've seen The Matrix. And it's a lot like when Neo wakes up and sees the world for what it is, and then goes to live in another utopic place. It's kind of that notion as well built in.
Okay. Um, so the good then is something that exists independent of our observation of it or of our understanding of it. I mean, I'm thinking of the sun, which whether I observe the sun or not, it's still there. And so I'm
Yeah.
asking, the good is something that is I almost tangible. Maybe that's not quite the right word. Can you go a little deeper with that? I need to understand that a little better.
And Fred, that's the exact right question to be asking, because that's what your namesake. I can't believe you're named after Friedrich Nietzsche. This is
Well, somebody
this
has
is
to be.
blowing my mind, and he's one of my favorite philosophers. Don't get me wrong.
We don't
He
spell our
was
names the same way, but okay, yeah.
good.
Dad didn't think
Uh,
that was unique. I had Fredrik. As far as I know, that is unique. So that was his thing. But yeah,
right,
go ahead.
right, and it's largely due to Nietzsche that Nietzsche found democracy disgusting, as I'm sure you're probably going to know most of what I'm saying here, given that it's
Mhm,
your namesake and your heritage you're talking about. He found democracy disgusting, and he equated it with the weak, quote unquote,
mhm,
and weak morality and what he called slave morality. Now, I don't want to get too deep into this. I don't put too much stock into this,
mhm.
but Nietzsche's far too brilliant just to ignore. And so he was right that there is this kind of tendency in humankind in some way to be smarmy and to point fingers at everybody else but never look inside, and to feel a lot of resentment towards those people who might be doing better than you, or those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And but the most important part of what he did was to try to destroy moral truth and the truth in general. And we can see the effect that's happening in front of our eyes right now. The fact that Trump was elected, and the fact that they're using post facts and post truths, and they're blatantly denying what the truth is, and they just submit their own narrative as if
Okay,
the truth
stop. You
doesn't
got to
matter.
define post fact, post truth. That's not a term that everybody is going to understand. Can you explain exactly what those mean?
Well, yeah, I can, and what I'm trying to say is that just harkens right back to what Nietzsche already said about
Mhm.
questioning rhetorically that the truth exists, and if it exists, that we can even know it because we have some kind of flaw in our understanding of it.
Yeah.
And that
Okay.
notion that originally he attacked moral truth with, but he bled it into truth proper. That notion, that postmodern notion of an equivocality in truth, that it's all subjective, right? Now, this is going to be very important
Mhm.
later on, that it's all subjective.
Right.
That notion has bled into everything. It's bled into physics, right? And where they
Mhm.
simultaneously say the cat is alive and dead simultaneously, or that if you merely
Schrodinger.
observe, yeah, if you merely observe a light particle, it stops behaving in a wave and starts behaving as a particle. And they start saying really zany things in physics that are blending the epistemic and ontological divide, the divide of what we know versus what is.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it's destroyed moral truth. Now, every first year philosophy student knows there's no moral truth, or at least they think, that's a de facto position now in society,
Right.
that there's no moral truth. It's all just your subjective opinion.
Mhm.
And that's bled all the way into business. Business decided to start using this to do whatever they want, to make more money, really. And that's bled on now into politics, because that's the movement that Trump used to get elected, that there's no truth. There's just his narrative. He
Mhm.
directly denies what the truth is. And
Yeah.
that's what post truths and post facts are, is that they think they're living in some kind of world, some kind of, they've quote unquote progressed, I would say regressed into some kind of state where the truth either A, doesn't exist, that's the hard line of it, and it's all narrative, it's all just subjective narratives, or at the very least it
Right.
doesn't matter. And that's all very Nietzsche, because Nietzsche would say that it's the strong who rule, and the strong just dictate what they think the truth is, and go
Mhm.
with it to the point that everybody follows along. And Trump is a perfect example of Friedrich Nietzsche's strong, because they weren't that smart and they weren't that strong. They were just bullish, right? That was his point.
Mhm.
And you know how Kanye said that Trump had dragon energy. That's so Nietzsche what Kanye said there. That yes, it's dragon energy. It's strong energy. It's vibrant. It's living its own truth, so to speak. Whatever else you want to say about it. And I could say a million other things about Trump and everything, all the terrible things he's done. So I'm still trying to answer your question. But by the way, this is a long way of answering your question.
No, that's all right. Take the time to do it. I prefer a thorough answer to a quick and shallow one. So please go right
great.
ahead.
You'll have nothing but too thorough for me. So when you ask, what is the good and how do you know about it? In a way, you're asking, is it objective? You said the sun's objective. It's not even there. It's not there when I'm not looking at it. But how can the good be objective? Because this is getting into the realm of personal likes and dislikes. This is getting in the realm of subjective feelings. And it definitely is. And this is getting into the realm of morality. And so we all know that there is no moral truth, or we know that is at least a de facto position that needs to be encountered in the argument these days, only because Nietzsche made it that way.
Right.
So how can you tell me, Josh, that there's this good we should be going for, and how is it objective? Well, it's objective like this. It's not subjective in that it's not hopelessly subjective in that I like strawberries and you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it works. But there's a likingness that we both do that is true and relative to us. So the good is objective in the same way gravity is objective, that it's objectively relative. The good is objectively relative. It is a concept outside any of us or all of us that we perceive, that we understand. It's an idea. It was the most important of all ideas as far as Plato was concerned. It was the central, the chief idea. The idea that if you don't understand that idea, you don't understand anything in human life, or what's important about it, or what's good to preserve in it. And it's objectively relative to all of us. It gets its frequencies and variances from every single individual who is at stake, so to speak, or who's relevant to the situation.
All right.
So, for example, if we were walking down the street and with two people with us, and we were hungry and said, "Okay, let's eat. Let's eat at this Thai place right here. Let's eat at this deli right here." And I'd say, no, that's no good because Melissa has a gluten allergy, and so she needs to eat non-gluten food. And that deli is going to have, has a bakery in it. It's going to have gluten all over the place. We can't even go in there. She's too allergic. It would be better, or in my vernacular, it would be gooder. It would be better serving the good if we would go to this Thai place over here because they cook with rice noodles and there's no gluten in it, and everyone should be fine. Everyone there should be able to have a sufficiently tasty meal that is in the realm of good, likable for them. It's good for them, but it doesn't actually hurt anybody at the same time.
All right.
And so do you see how the good in that situation is a rudder that orients us? It's objective. I didn't make it up. There are stuff that all of us like or dislike that's not made up, but it's relative to everybody. And if you can get it in the right harmony, if you get it in the right frequency of being sufficiently good for everyone in the green, but not in the red for anybody else, how that's serving the good. And if it's like, oh, instead of going to this Thai place, let's say there's, whatever, Johnny's Thai place, which is some kind of franchise that we know Melissa likes even more, and it's still fine for all of us. We go, well, let's go there instead because that's even better. Better still, right? Gooder still. And it's that seeking the roof, seeking the pinnacle of goodness that you can never necessarily achieve practically, but you're always trying to seek it and you understand it theoretically. That's what infuses the movement, and that's what that orients our morality, and I think orients morality, period. And so I hope that goes some way to showing you how the good is objective and not just subjectively meaningless, like I like strawberries.
Right. Okay. And it does, which now brings up, in my mind at least, the next question. I would submit that a moral question is never a question of good versus evil. And the reason is there's not really a problem there. Choose the good. Okay. That's not a problem. A moral problem arises when I have to choose between conflicting goods. The classic example, it's the policeman's ball or whatever. All the policemen are gone. My wife is going to die without some particular drug that they have down at the pharmacy. I don't have any money. So I'm going to break into the pharmacy and steal the drug and give it to my wife. Now I have conflicting goods. There is the good of upholding the law. We do not break into pharmacies and steal things. There is the good of allowing my wife to live. Then I have the conflicting goods. I need to choose between them. And then that would be where a moral problem arises. Does that
Right.
sound okay? So then can you do that on your good scale, the green versus the red and everything? Is that how you would solve a problem like that?
Of course, yeah. And no, you're very wise to bring that up. That's of course the next question. It's like, okay, Josh, yes, this is all well and good when when you have a win-win scenario for everybody, we're all in the green, life is good. But before I answer your question, I just want to take a step back and say how remarkable it is that once you discover what the good is, let us not discount the win-win scenarios, right? Let us not just brush over everyone being in the green and how good that is.
Yes.
And now we've out of the muck and out of the mire and of the chaos and the confusion, we found a true objective moral principle that we can all appeal to, it's not. There's more problems in just even trying to just seek the just the win-win scenarios. I mean, we even tribalism gets in the way of us and even disagreeing in just the win-win scenarios. So that's not. I know you weren't trying to say this, but I just want to mention this. That of course that's not trivial either. We still, we're people of conscience. We'll still disagree even on the win-win scenarios. But let's go to what appears to be what you've painted as a win-lose scenario, and the policeman's ball scenario. And I would say in this particular scenario, for me, it's a no-brainer. If you accept that the good is the objective rudder that we should be following anyway,
yes.
And my argument for that is, well, because it's gooder. Nothing is gooder than the gooder. It's self-contained, right? Nothing's better than what's the best. So this is what we should be doing. But in the scenario where we have to apparently hurt somebody else, I would say, and it's a bit of a cop-out, but the policeman's ball scenario isn't that big of a moral problem for me. I would, in an instant, break the window, take the medicine, leave a note saying, I'll pay you back when I can. And give it to my wife. I mean, clearly, the amount of damage it would cause to multiple members of the good to have, this person die just because she couldn't get the medication she needed so tragically,
right,
is far, far worse than the small financial outcome or output that it puts the pharmacist in. And don't get me wrong, the good is not simply utilitarianism.
Okay.
Utilitarianism is a failure of moral theory. We only make utilitarianism style decisions, hurting the minority to help the majority, or we're not even doing that. I'm hurting one person to save one other person.
Right.
But let's say it was utilitarian, just so I can make this point, is that utilitarianism is a failure of morality because someone in that struggle has to be hurt necessarily. So although I couldn't call my action to steal from the pharmacist moral, because morality can't harbor any negativity or badness, or morality isn't as moral as it pretends to be.
Yes.
But I can say it's justified, and I can still say it's overall moral or it's overall gooder for me to do this. And I think that policeman's ball thought experiment that you point out shows how poor our moral theory currently is right now. Right now, our moral theory, despite Nietzsche's best efforts, is still dominated by the Judeo-Christian concept of white or black, good, sin or not a sin, Kantian duty or not a duty. It's a right or wrong. It's a zero-sum game that does not allow of any kind of texture and does not allow of any kind of ability to adjudicate between competing goods. And that's a lot of the reason why we fail, because that moral theory is simply not commensurate with the world we live in. And so a lot of people just don't follow it properly or give up on it in general.
Now, I want to take this then to the next logical step in my mind. Okay, we have agreed that, we would break into the pharmacy because we're not going to let someone die for medicine for a lack of medicine they could have over money, which then forces the question, isn't that what we morally as a society should do about healthcare? Shouldn't that be available to every human being, regardless of the number of pieces of cotton and linen that they have collected with that nice printing on it? Should that morally not be accessible to everyone?
Right. So, I mean, I'll tell you now, Fred. Of course, I'm Canadian, so you're largely preaching to the choir on this one.
Okay.
And for our listeners, we're recording this right now in the coronavirus outbreak of 2020. It's middle of April. I've been on self-imposed quarantine for a month and a half. I'm going crazy in my house here. I'm glad this is a podcast and not a video podcast because let me tell you, my hair is crazy, my beard's crazy.
I don't even own a camera, and there's a reason for that. But yeah, go ahead.
Right, exactly. And so, I mean, yes, it's so obvious now. And if one good thing comes out of this coronavirus, it shows that no, your healthcare cannot be tied to your living wage. Healthcare must be a right. It must be considered a right. The general person needs to consider healthcare a right, and it needs to be provided like a utility for life because it's required. You know, it just is. Obviously, you need healthcare for life.
Yes.
The society at large requires healthcare to be a right for everybody and granted to everybody in sufficient measure. Because then, if you don't, then we have pandemics like this and we have outbreaks like this, where the society, as like a body, it doesn't have an immune system. It has plenty of cells out there that don't have protection, and then the entire body gets sick, and then even worse outcomes occur. And then the more you have bad management on top of that, of course, cough, cough, Trump again. And the more
Yes.
you have tribalism on top of that, cough, cough, the left and the right being
Yeah.
so far divided and can't see any common ground,
Right.
that just exacerbates the problem. And of course, the worse it gets. There's no enlightenment in this system. There's no harmony in this system. There's no gooding in this system. And so batting occurs. So bad happens. So when you really start to understand the good, it really becomes quite obvious what the problems are and how it needs to be fixed, no matter which rubric you want to discuss it. You want to discuss it in rights, fine. You want to discuss it in just economic terms, fine. We can discuss it in any of these terms. But in all these terms, we need to determine what our value system is. And the only value system is capital V value. And capital V value is the good.
Okay. Now, see, and I completely agree with everything you've just said. And now that makes me wonder, um, what what are we? Okay, we know we can pretty much agree the world is not working this way. And you are an advocate of meditation, so I'm going to ask you to make a connection for me, if there is one, between changing the world from what it is, which is failing, because, for among other things, for example, I can get very few people to support the very basic idea that there is no them, we are all us, regardless of whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, your religion, your sexuality, whatever. You break them up into any group, it doesn't matter. We're all us. We're all human beings, and the differences between you and me, or me and Jeff Bezos, or me and the panhandler outside of Circle K, are no more than a couple of chromosomes. I mean, we are
Mm-hmm.
all it. Okay. And coronavirus has kind of emphasized, hey, we're all in this together. Um, and I would love to see if there's going to be a silver lining in the coronavirus.
Yes, I'm
And it's
wondering
a
that too.
catastrophe. Yeah, and I mean, it's a catastrophe, and I'm not going to, by no means would I ever make light of the coronavirus, and I am really annoyed with people that do.
Right.
But
Yes.
if something good comes out of it, it could be that we say, hey, look, the world isn't working this way. This vaunted economy that's supposed to be so great can't even produce enough masks and ventilators to handle a crisis. And we're this
Right.
awesome economy. The
Yeah.
people that are essential are the ones who don't make any money. It's the people working at Circle K or Walmart
Yep.
or delivering Amazon and UPS and Uber. And did anybody notice that the CEO could very well be on vacation right now? And how would I know? And why would I care?
Yep.
Um, and so, if this goes on long enough and we survive it, and I'm a little scared about whether we're going to survive it when I see people out protesting and gathering in large groups, infecting one another. But assuming we survive it, um, we would like to have a different world. And I'm wondering, is there a way that I can connect the idea of meditation, which I do not understand and need for you to explain? I mean, I know what it is, but I would like a much deeper understanding than I have. And can I connect that somehow to
Sure.
changing the world? So that's, if you can kind of go in that direction, that would be helpful. A word from our sponsor. Fortunately, I don't have any official sponsors, and I'm not going to try to sell you any product or service except the one you're enjoying now. Or at least, I hope you're enjoying it. You've listened to half of it by now, so, yeah, you probably are. So here's the pitch. I live in poverty. We can debate whether I'm deserving of better than that another time. If you've listened to more than a couple of episodes, you have deduced that I believe all human beings deserve the basics of life: a safe place to sleep, running water, electricity, food, clothing appropriate to their environment, medical care, and education. I argue that, I think, pretty persuasively in many episodes. Check some of them out. With the pandemic upon us, I'm unemployed. I didn't make enough money to qualify for unemployment, so I have gone from not really enough money to make ends meet, but enough to contribute something to the living expenses my roommates and I share, to absolutely nothing. This is all I can really do right now. I'm 57, diabetic as they come, and I've been waiting for 14 months to get disability. I have to contribute financially to my upkeep in some way or other. It is a moral imperative for me. For what it's worth, I work well over 40 hours a week on this podcast. So, if you enjoy the podcast and you would click support this podcast and throw in a little money, that would be great. If you do it here on the Spotify app or Anchor or wherever you're listening to it, you're a sponsor, I suppose. I won't do a commercial for you, but I will thank you publicly for your support. If you don't want me to use your name, that's fine. I will assign you the name of a literary character. There's lots and lots about that in the Patreon link. As of April 21st, 2020, I have 8 supporters. They are Hermione Granger, Della Young, Anna Karenina, Boo Radley, Jean Louise Finch, Della Young, Elizabeth Bennett, and Holden Caulfield. If you would like me to mention you by your actual name, I'm happy to do that. Just send me a note, make a comment, whatever you need to do, let me know, and I'll use your real name. I am up to just under $60 a month right now. That's not much, I suppose, in many ways, but it feels fantastic to me. It means that I'm getting paid as an artist. That's a lifelong dream. If you want your podcast commercial-free, as all art ought to be, you can head over to Patreon and you can sign up as a patron, and I'll be putting commercial-free episodes over there. I'm still working on a new version of the Patreon site since, to my knowledge, the old one never worked. So please forgive any imperfections. I know very little about websites, but the link is in the show notes, and there's some nice episodes waiting for you over there. Now, even if you can't afford to throw any money in the kitty, and I certainly understand if you can't, we're all going through this pandemic together, I want you to know that I am deeply grateful that you listen. That is more valuable to my soul than money is. If my soul is going to have a body to continue to inhabit, I have to find a way to keep that body alive. Thanks for listening. And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
Sure. So the good news is we can, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a silver lining. Healing can always happen both on the personal and societal level. You just need to have the will to do it. You just need to have the wherewithal, the desire to seek the good. You need to yearn for the good badly enough, and you can seek it. when you were talking about your thesis about it's not just them, it's us, I thought of the quote, "We murder to dissect." And so I thought, it's kind of the problem of tribalism is that we start cutting people up into their moniker. We start cutting people up into their label, which in a way is even if not prejudiced itself in just trying to be accurate. It's a doorway to prejudice, right? In a way, because once you have differentiation, then you can have racism. If you don't have no
Mm-hmm.
differentiation, you can have no prejudice because you need something to hinge the prejudice on. And
Yeah,
so,
actually, Dr. Seuss, the Sneetches. Do you remember that? The one, the Starbelly Sneetches, and
mhm,
then somebody was putting stars on everyone's bellies, and you had to get rid of the star to be the select group. And yeah, they were all the same, and pretty soon nobody could remember who were the good ones and who were the bad ones based on stars. And so, oh well, to hell with it. We'll just move on.
right.
But that's the differentiation I think that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of it's such it's poignant for me because, scientific thinking is in part a problem in that all the human rational brain is trying to do is protect itself. It's like, okay, I see this kind of person, I label them as X, and then I think I observe some kinds of problems in my mind with X, and then I have a prejudice, right? I'm prejudging the entire class of X with just maybe the mistakes of a couple individuals or no mistakes at all, just xenophobia fills in the rest, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so we're halfway there in our scientific judgments, and meditation will help with this. Meditation will help with everything. So let me get to that portion. So the way that meditation helps this scenario, meditation is very popular these days, which is a good thing. The slight challenge we have with meditation is that right now it's pretty smarmy. Right now it's pretty hokey. Right now it's kind of just close your eyes and do deep breathing, and some magic will happen. And so
Yes.
that's not what I mean by meditation. What I mean by meditation, I mean something much more comprehensive and powerful. I mean meditation in the sense of Descartes, which we already mentioned, which
Mm-hmm.
he talked about in his meditations on first philosophy, where he went out to the cabin and he came up alone to get rid of all of his moral thoughts and to come up with the cogito ergo sum, or the I think as such I am statement that we mentioned earlier. So it's that Western kind of contemplation, also mixed with the what's now become popular, the Eastern methods of Zen, of oblivion, of seeking nothingness, of trying to calm down in that regard. The Eastern Buddhist methods of trying to seek enlightenment in those regards, and in what I've discovered in Buddhism, very very fascinating, interesting, brilliant secrets that they've discovered in their hours of sitting there meditating over the last 5,000 years of finding ways to get neocortex and frontal brain, top brain control over what has previously been subconscious kind of limbic emotional states. And there's many hacks that they know about that I talk about in my show. And then also, that also fusing that with the East-West divide of the Greeks, which are kind of right in the middle, both historically and geographically and culturally, of this concept of the good, right? And here's the biggest thing that we're missing is that enlightenment is all well and good, but if enlightenment is not enlightened, then it's not worth having. And what makes enlightenment enlightened is a positive quality to it, is the good, the positive quality, right? You can take any adjective, excellence, enlightenment, morality. All these things are supposed to be good. They are intended to be good. They're connoted to be good. So for them to all participate in the good, they have to understand the good. They have to know parts of the good as a concept. The good has to use a metaphor, breathe into them, has to have that enthusmos, to use the Greek word, the root word of enthusiasm. You make an enthusiastic kind of positivity into these concepts, and that's what fuels them, and that's how you know they're oriented in the right direction. Some people these days seems to think they were tricked again by your namesake, by Mr. Nietzsche.
Hmm.
And they seem to think, and Heidegger to a degree as well, and they seem to think that enlightenment is about nothingness. It's about nihilism. It's about removing all that pain and removing all the hopes and fears until you're numb.
Okay.
And that is a meditative technique for sure, and can be a very useful meditative technique when you're feeling too much or over threshold. I've used it numerous times. Sadly, very recently, a sad story. My mother passed away. She committed doctor-assisted suicide. It was just a few months ago because her leukemia was too much for her to bear. It was too painful for her to bear. She was losing oxygen in her blood, and so it was like she was suffocating just in her own juices, so to speak.
And she
And
had a doctor who was kind enough to there was not a legal issue here with that?
no, in Canada, in British Columbia, it's perfectly legal for doctor-assisted suicide in situations like this to
Okay.
end the sufferer's suffering. So that's a good thing, obviously, that in Canada we have that. But the point is that obviously, and I was there. My father still does, and my parents rented a room from us in my house. They rent the first floor, and so I was there bedside with her. And the way I coped with having to experience this, having to watch this, was through that meditative oblivion technique. And so it's very powerful. And there was another recent traumatic event that I did the same thing, and so these techniques are very powerful and useful when applied in the right place. But enlightenment is not just nihilism. Enlightenment is not just nothing, being afraid to ever feel happy or good again in case that ever turns sour. That's not a very enlightened view. I think that ruptures the definition of enlightenment.
Okay,
Uh,
where do you go on the idea of ridding oneself of attachments? I mean, that's rather Eastern, if I understand correctly. Is that kind of what you're talking about here?
Oh, that's such a good question, Fred. So yes, so that's fascinating. The Eastern Western bridge there. So that is definitely Buddhist for sure. Yes, and that is definitely important, ridding oneself of attachments. But you only want to that see that. But that's exactly where the religions go slightly wrong over time, and that ties into the whole Cometian or the ancient Egyptian notion that Plato picks up in the Republic of the digression of the regimes from the golden age that understands. So I'm gonna get really new age right now. The golden
Okay.
age that of the society that understands excellence and doesn't have to have any rules because everyone behaves according to the good because they all seek the good natively. To the rule users who don't understand why the masters set up the system the way they did. They just follow the rules, and the rules get slightly wrong over time, and the rules get slightly confused over time because they forgot the spirit of why the rules were made. And
Okay, when you refer to the rules, are you, for example, the Ten Commandments? Is that the sort of thing you mean?
well, I don't want to anger anyone in the Judeo
No, but I
Christian.
mean, just as an example, there are thousands of other such examples. But I
Sure.
mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, particularly using that one Buddhistic ridding yourself of attachments that you mentioned, and the
Mhm.
bridge over to Plato and Socrates is that's the Socratic dictum. That's what he
Okay.
called practicing how to die. Now, he did not literally mean you're doing anything negative or you're hurting yourself or anything like that. It's about letting and ridding yourself of attachments, the exact attachments you need to rid yourself of, and the exact way the things that in you that need to die are those unhealthy desires and unhealthy emotions, the unhealthy relationships, the unhealthy habits, and the unhealthy addictions that are bad for you, that are causing you pain and causing the society pain. But
Hmm.
there's no use in ridding yourself of attachments in so much that you have nothing worth living in your life. I mean, if that's, I mean, I can't speak for the Buddhists. I'm not Buddha. I'm not the Dalai Lama. But it seems to me, and I think if you ask them, they would agree that if enlightenment is supposed to be ridding yourself of so many attachments that you're numb and you have nothing, and literally you're feeling longing, you're feeling ripped open with nothing goodness inside. That's I don't think what enlightenment's supposed to be. That's torture, right?
Right.
So I don't think So yes, for some of us who are extremely desirous and extremely wanton, we have to take a more monkish approach to our lives, and we have to rid ourselves of. We have to be away from the sex. We have to be away from the alcohol. We have to be away from Twitter. We have to be away from the TV. We have to be away from all our bad things that we know we're addicted to, and we have to rid ourselves of those attachments only because they lead to a bad place, either for us or other people, or both. And the exact way we know what to rid ourselves of, the exact way we know how to practice how to die, is to kill off those things that are not good, that don't help us seek the good and make the good gooder.
Okay. Now, yeah, that is rather monk-like, and I think my problem in that is: are we negating the value of pleasure? I don't want to sound entirely hedonistic, but how much fun is? What's the point of life if I'm not enjoying any of it?
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly it. And as Plato wrote in the Phaedrus, in which Socrates was having his dialogue with the hedonist, there's true pleasure and there's mixed pleasures, right? And so the mixed pleasures are like getting, or it's like everyone's done it. It's like getting drunk. That night you feel great, but next morning you feel terrible. And oops, did I do that when I was drunk? And oops, did I contract that disease when I was drunk? Or oops, did I give that disease to somebody else when I was drunk? All the consequences come from that. And so that's mixed pleasure, which is tarnished. It's tarnished pleasure.
Okay.
The hedonist and the true seeker of the good seeks only those pleasures that are in the green, right? That I said earlier, that aren't hurting anybody, including yourself. And they're as good as we can get, as much wholesome fun as we can have without hurting anybody, and making sure everyone is good. And that in no way disincludes, by the way, that in no way disincludes a moderate amount of the drinking and the sex and the whatever else, assuming that everyone is informed of what's happening and they're all adults and everything's consensual and
You're
everything's for
making
the
conscious choices. Yes. Right.
yeah, everything is for the good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So no, I think it's a very interesting psychological study of human beings, that some of us need to go to such lengths to live what is a baseline good life. Why do some monks and Sufis that I've studied as well in the Arabic tradition, and in the early Christian tradition, Boethius or Al-Ghazali, Ibn Tufail, why do these people, Augustine, or Saint Augustine for the Catholics,
Yes.
Why do these people need to remove themselves from society entirely just to have a basic, healthy soul that is not addicted to something? It's unless society is much worse than I see it is, most people don't need to do that, right? They can put their cell phone down. They don't have to go onto Twitter. They can decide not to have a drink that night. Most people are healthy enough in their soul. They haven't been abused enough. They haven't been unlucky enough to be in those situations. And hey, I've been there myself. I'm not judging anybody.
Right.
But you have to take a step back and say, no. The claim that you have to remove yourselves from every attachment, including your loved ones, when we're a social species, the claim that we need to completely remove ourselves from everything, or practicing how to die, is getting rid of all the sex. And so Christianity goes too far, getting rid of all the fun. That goes too far. Right. It's a balance that needs to be negotiated, and the good, staying in the green, is the exact way we negotiate it.
Because I think it would cease to be the good. I think it would slip entirely out of the green if I simply said, okay, I mean, you're right. One of the reasons that, Robin Williams has that in Dead Poet Society, and I'm going to misquote it, but architecture, medicine, law, these are necessary professions and we need them to sustain life. But art, literature, music, these are what we stay alive for. And that would be, I don't want to rid myself of my love of those things, because that's when life becomes, that's when I experience real pleasure. That is some of the most intense pleasure that you can get. And if I'm going to bother to breathe, I bloody well want to enjoy some of it. And not at the cost of hurting anyone else. And to me, that's always the issue. an action is, for me, moral or immoral, and I'm way going to oversimplify, but moral or immoral based on its consequences. If I do something and it helps someone else, that's probably moral. If I do something and it hurts someone else, that's probably immoral. Between the two, there are vast deserts of gray area, and I am well aware of that. But I think that would be a simple breakdown. Would you buy that answer?
Yeah, so I would say you're on the right track for sure, and we're on the same wavelength, definitely. And so yeah, no, the seeking of the good doesn't require you to live. Most people to live like a monk. Again,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're that person who needs to be strictly away from all these things, maybe you are. The good has no hard and fast rules other than the good is good. And why am I seeking it? Because it's good. Seek the good. Other than that, you make up everything else, right? Tailored to your situation.
Right.
So, because that would be good. And if it's not good, then don't do it. So to remove yourself from all attachments, including never talking to your children again, never talking to your loved ones again, clearly that would make a person miserable, no matter how good their Zen oblivion meditations. And
Right.
I don't think that's what the Buddha was asking us to do. I don't think, and if it was, well, then they were wrong. And I don't think that's definitely not what Socrates was asking us to do. And those are all silver interpretations of what was a golden idea to begin with, in my opinion.
I think that's a good way of putting it. Now, let me kind of ask you to bring this all into, and I guess tie it up into um, what what do we need to do to change the world, and how do we go about it? And I mean, very simple question, obviously, no, but if you can kind of tie in, how is meditation going to help a person to achieve making the world a better place, particularly now that we have a few minutes. The world is on pause now for a while. I don't know if it's going to be for a couple more months. I've heard as much as 18 months, and it may be forever. I don't know. What can we do now? And how will meditation help us accomplish what we would like to accomplish to achieve the good?
Yeah. So, and that's another very good question. So, uh, it is on pause. The world is on pause right now, but of course, the world can't be on pause for long. And it's like it's a flood I can feel on the back of the floodgates, and it's going to burst forth, I think, sooner than it should,
Mm-hmm.
and sooner than some of these later predictions about 18 months and whatnot. And I think it's going to be violent, as floods often are. I think there's going to be more casualties. But regardless, whether we're at a pause or not, a very pregnant pause or not, or whether we're still in situ and still going, the way meditation helps is very practical. It's very basic. Meditation, speaking as a practice, is just training for your soul. It's training for your mind. It's training for your emotions. It trains the emotional side, how you can control and process. Control is not the best adjective. How you can process, how you can negotiate with, how you can rein in, and how you can direct your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And also contemplation, how you can seek the concepts that by what you should be reining in those emotions for. And of course, that's the good. So it brings you in greater proximity with the good, and it washes away the bad habits. It washes away a lot of the problems that are holding you back from performing fully. It is exercise like gymnastics is for the body. Meditation is for the soul. It makes you literally smarter. It makes you wiser. It makes you more balanced. It makes you more perceptive, more creative.
Okay, now for my listeners and for myself, and I know what I'm going to ask you is a 7 hour long answer, and I'm going to ask you to do it much more briefly than that. But what can you
Okay.
give me essentially? Okay, meditation isn't just deep breathing and saying Om. Can you give us a brief explanation of what you mean by meditation and how it differs from what most of us have heard?
It differs in that, yes, breathing is important. That's step one. I don't use the Om method. That's an oblivion Zen method that tries to, again, seek some calm. If the Om is getting into the theta range, then that's just starting to program the limbic system to be calm, assuming you're being calm. There's so many other tricks and hacks you need to add to that. So from a practical standpoint, like literally, Josh, what am I doing? Well, yeah, you are sitting there and you are calm and you are breathing, but I'm going to tell you all these new secrets and all these new hacks of ways to hack your brain and start getting control of your emotions, both on the cognitive contemplative side with words and on the Buddhist Eastern meditation side with weird tricks of your mind. And so to just give an example for the listeners, and the reason why the original question was, how is this going to help fix the world? Well, the world is nothing but a bunch of people in it.
Yeah.
It's just raw statistics. The more people who are wiser and more balanced and oriented towards the gooder the world gets. And that's just a plain fact, right? The reason why the world is so sick right now, because all the people in it are so sick right now.
Yes.
And that's the country is nothing but the people in it. The society is nothing but the people in it. And the people in it are nothing but their psychologies.
Okay.
And so we need to fix their psychologies. We need to, for those who are broken, we need to improve the psychologies for those who are lackluster. We need to help educate the psychologies that are coming up, that are young and are growing. And we're all young and growing in some degree. Yeah. So let me give you a simple, really quick example right now, a meditation lesson of one of these tricks that you've probably never heard of.
Okay.
That added to 50 other tricks starts to make a night and day difference between not meditating or just sitting there breathing and going versus what the BAMing movement is trying to do. Would you mind?
No, please do. That's why we're here.
Okay. So this comes from the Buddhist tradition, or that's how I came by it. It could be in other traditions. And it's called Spin the Clouds.
Spin the Clouds.
Spin the Clouds. That's okay. Well, that's one way it's called in English.
Okay.
So what I want you to do right now, everyone listening to this, is just take a moment. You can close your eyes if you like. It doesn't really matter. And I just want you to be cognizant of all the emotions right now you're feeling, all of the feelings you're feeling. Your legs might be a bit tired because you just did a bike workout. Your lungs might be burning slightly because you have coronavirus, as I've had for the last 6 weeks. I just muted myself to cough, so I'm not coughing in your ears. Okay. I've been doing that the whole time. And I want you to feel whatever emotions you're feeling, whatever excitement, whatever curiosity you might be feeling, whatever confusion you might be feeling over, what is this stuff, Josh? What are you talking about? And I want you, I'm going to ask you a weird question. And I'm going to ask you, where are you feeling it? Where in your body are you feeling this sum totality of feeling? And the answer doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong for any of this. So don't feel like this is a test you're going to get wrong. You can't get this wrong. Wherever you're feeling it, feel it there. And I want you just to be cognizant of what you're feeling. That's all. Just be mindful of what you're feeling. Just notice what you're feeling. And some surprises might come out to you. You might be like, oh, wow, my legs are kind of sore. Or I didn't notice that before. Or, oh, I am feeling a little nervous right now. I didn't notice that before. That's fine. That's okay. Now, the next question, once you feel where in your body it is, I want you to tell me, how's it moving? How does it move in your body? Do you feel it swirling at all? Do you feel it mixing like a powder in liquid? And if it doesn't feel like it's moving in any direction, I want you to give it a direction. I want you to just feel it spinning like a picture of a galaxy, or a top. Those beautiful pictures we get from the Hubble's telescope of a spiral galaxy kind of spinning.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to take those emotions. I want you, wherever they are in your body, I want you to spin them in any direction you want, clockwise, counterclockwise. The motion might be even slightly more complicated than that. It could be kind of strange Mobius motions of going in and out on itself and collapsing in on itself and coming out kind of like weird smoke. That's fine. Just let it move. Just feel it. Let it move. There's no wrong answer. Just let it swish around the way it's swishing or spin the way it's spinning. Now, once you definitely feel imagine, I need a new adjective or adverb. It's feel/imagine. I call it famagine. There's something, but I definitely want you to feel it, not just imagine it, if at all possible. I want you to tie it to your emotions.
Right.
You feel it almost like an internal tidal effect in your body. For those of us who've stood in the ocean for a while and felt it moving around, that's what I want you to kind of feel and tie that feeling to your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And once you feel which direction it's going in, now this is the key thing. I want you to break it. I want you to consciously stop it moving in that direction and move it in the complete opposite direction. So you can use your hands as a metaphor if you want, or you can just imagine it just stops and moves in another direction and breaks. And then I want you to break it. I want you to moving in another direction. I want you to break it again. And I want you to consciously feel it breaking again and feel it stopping again and feel it stopping again and again until you're really just mixing this up and kneading up this dough and ripping it up and ripping it up and ripping it up. You can use your hands as like you're ripping open Play-Doh, if you will. Play-Doh, not Play-Doh. Play-Doh with your hands if you want. And that is called spinning the clouds. It's, believe it or not, you might have felt something attached to it. Like when you break the emotion or feelings, you might feel a slight disconnect. You might feel it stop slightly, interestingly.
I did actually, yeah.
That's good. That's good. That means you're even more receptive to it. And so the more you practice that, this method is a life-saving method. This is primarily the method I used when my mother passed away to control my emotions.
Okay.
Plus a couple other tricks I've put in. And practicing this over time will give you a greater control over what the limbic system is doing. And I've never plugged anyone into an fMRI for this, and I've never seen any good studies on it either. I've seen them put Buddhists in fMRIs in my studies in my PhD.
Hey, for those of us not doctors, fMRI, can you explain a little bit?
Sure. It's a magnetic resonating chamber that allows people to view what the brain is doing in real time by tracking the blood in the brain.
Okay.
A lot of people have been in there it's that big tube you have to go into, and a lot of people have been in there for any kind of medical imaging inside the body.
Yeah, I think I have too, but all right, yeah. All right.
So it's that thing. It's that thing. So they've done studies where they've put Buddhists into fMRIs to see what's going on in their brains when they're meditating. I don't know that anyone ever tried the spin the clouds method, because Buddhists have plenty of meditation methods beyond this. So I haven't seen any good data on that. If anyone else has out there, please by all means contact me. I'd love to see it, see this data. But what I suspect from a neuroscientific perspective is happening when you practice this is that you are literally getting your frontal lobe and your neocortex and the more quote unquote rational parts of the brain, the more conscious parts of the brain, to take literal direct control of the more mammal brain, the more mammalian brain, the more limbic brain, the more emotional brain, and say, nope, I don't want to feel that anymore. Stop that, turn it off, and start to interrupt those processes. And so you can start to interrupt the emotional patterns, and you could then, once you've interrupted the emotional patterns, you can take those emotional patterns into other directions, which is...
That's the next question then. Are there emotions that would you suggest there are emotions that I should just try to avoid or skip feeling?
Well, quite frankly, I would. Any emotions that are not good, any emotions
grief, for example. I mean, when I'm sure, and maybe I'm wrong, you had to have felt grief. I felt grief when my father died. I'm sure that you must have felt some grief when your mother died. Is that not right?
No, of course, yes.
Okay, yeah.
No. Okay, so I think a big, and I think any psychologists out there listening to this are waiting with bated breath to make sure I say the right answer. And so, so you can't bottle up emotions for too long, obviously. I have hacks you can use to bottle up emotions, to control emotions, but they're going to come out eventually. And so I've also practiced EMDR and bilateral stimulation kind of movements. EMDR, I can't remember what the acronym stands for. I could Google it, but it's used for post-traumatic stress disorder treatments in Israel and among other places. And so it helps you process the emotions. And so this Buddhist technique I just taught you, when you practice it over time, you've disrupted the emotions. But the question is, and your question is a very good question. Okay, what do we do with the emotions now?
Mm-hmm.
And in my view of the good, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To quote Shakespeare,
Hamlet. Yeah,
Hamlet. Yeah, exactly.
that was Hamlet. Yes.
Yes, it was. And one of his best quotable plays, probably
Yes.
because it's so long, there's so much there to quote. But
Yeah.
uh, uh, so there's no utility, there's no good in grief qua grief, because grief hurts. The good is in processing it and letting it go. So emotions are like food. You have to take them in, and you can't hold it in. You have to let it go, or problems happen. And that's, of course, in
Right.
therapy, what people are talking about, to try and dislodge those emotions and get them to pass through naturally.
Okay.
It's this Buddhist method is going to help dislodge those emotions, and I hope pass them through.
Okay. Would it be fair to say, though, that part of who we are is what we experience, and part of who you are today, part of who I am today, is because of the grief we experienced at the loss of our parents, and of course, joy we experienced here, anger there, fear somewhere else. So those are didn't those all go into making us who we are?
They definitely did. Are you suggesting that there's some value to that?
Well, yeah, I'm suggesting that I'm not sure that I would be who I am if I hadn't experienced some of those emotions, and so that's why
Let
I'm
me ask
wondering.
you.
Do I go ahead?
Sure. Let me ask you a follow up question then. So it's a very simple question, and I hope you don't mind sharing with us.
No, go ahead.
And it's point blank. Do you like who you are now? Is who you are your maximal good?
Maximal good, certainly not. Best I can do at the moment, but I would certainly like to be better than I am. And I have always wanted to be better than I am. And 5 minutes before I die, I will still, I think, want to be better than I am.
Yes, and so that's very good. I like that answer. That answer is very good, and that would be my answer for your question. Is yes, of course, the emotional landscape that we encounter forms us. It is that water that flows over the clay, to use the Platonic metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
and it can form us in ways that are good or bad. And there's many paths to the good. Like I said, we don't have to become a monk and be all very, very, to use a Star Trek metaphor, very Borgish. We don't have to be drones. We don't have to be all the same.
Yeah.
And seeking the good is in no way like that. Your path to the good is your path to the good. My path to the good is my path to the good. Maybe we can walk along the path together for some time and be friends. Maybe our paths go in other directions. That's perfectly
Mm-hmm.
fine as long as we're all in the green. But and I'm not sure, and I'm not a psychotherapist, so forgive this slight psychologizing of what you asked, Fred. But maybe, and again, I could be completely wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
I thought I maybe sensed in there a little bit of indignation, of saying, this grief is my grief, and I'm going to, let the hate, because I was bullied as a child, and so I'm right there with you in some degrees.
Mm-hmm.
That rage and the desire for justice that I feel for those who abused me
Mm-hmm.
is definitely there, and I would be lying if I didn't say it was part of a very integral part of my process to try with the Bamming movement of trying to seek meditation from not only myself and soothe my soul, but to soothe the world.
Yeah,
But
and
it's
actually, you made the Star Trek reference, and far and away the worst Star Trek film ever made, Star Trek V, has one sequence that's really important here. Uh, Spock's long lost brother is going to rid Captain Kirk of all his pain,
right,
and Kirk says, "No, I need my pain." It,
right.
and
The
lousy
ever
movie,
the
but
ever
a great
Odyssean
scene.
character, yes.
Yeah, and and you have to ask yourself, or Picard, if you go that way, goes back in Tapestry and lets himself not get, makes a better decision so that he doesn't get into the fight with the Nausicaans, doesn't get stabbed, doesn't break his
Right.
heart, and yeah, but then also
Exactly, yes.
isn't Picard anymore. And
Right.
so this is why I'm asking that is
Yes.
I want to suggest this: that is process the emotions, but if you're using it as a digestive system, fine, process them and then excrete them. Would that be? Is that a way to think
Well,
of it?
yes, and just remembering that we need to excrete the waste, including the wasteful, harmful, poisonous emotions. But
Right.
it does definitely nourish us. It does definitely form us. And no, again, as long as we're all in the green, it is going to color our paths and it's going to color our journey. And your journey is your journey, and your soul is impressed with to use a metaphor, with the things that have happened to you. And it's the trick is not letting that turn you to the bad, not letting that turn you away from the good, by letting that fuel you in your particular own special way, your style, your creativity, to dovetail all the way back to your namesake Nietzsche.
Yeah.
That's where his postmodern philosophy should go, is that it's we all style our way to the good in our own way, because it's objectively relative. But the sun is the sun, the good is the good. We can chart our own course in our spaceship to get there, but getting there is what we need to do, because it's the good is the good. There's nothing better than it, and it informs everything that is worth doing. And I think the
I think
danger in that some
yeah.
of the people, I think the danger in some of the people that have been injured, is that they carry that with them. That the Picard character, the Kirk character you mentioned, and maybe even myself, and maybe perhaps yourself. I'm not sure. I don't want to lump you into this. It's our struggle with those wounds to seek the good, I think, is that makes the character, that makes it, I'll use a different metaphor. It's a bit of a trite metaphor, but a Pinot Noir that's very spicy,
Mm-hmm.
as long as it's still good, it's within the green, as long as you still like it, it's still likable, then it's fine for it to be spicy, and not everyone likes the spicy. That's fine. Maybe they like a
Right.
Merlot, they like something drier, but it is what it is. It was formed the way it was formed. I think that's what makes the tableau of everyone seeking the good interesting in that regard.
I think that's fascinating, Josh. You've made an extraordinary case for your point, and we're like at the hour point, and it's about as long as I can really ask my audience to go. But can you give everybody an idea where they can find out more about this? Where can they find you, and all of that? Just plug a little of
Sure.
that, will you?
Sure. So you can follow me on Twitter at Josh Bachynski. That's JOSH, B as in Bob, ACHYNSKI. And if you want to try out my meditation assistant, which has all of my meditative tricks and hacks built into one free app, it's at app.meditationassistant.com. Again,
And
that's
look for that and the listeners, look for that in the show notes. I'll put a link to it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, not a problem. It's app.meditationassistant.com. All one word, meditation assistant, no dash. And it's a free meditation tool which uses all these tricks plus more to meditate, because I literally think we can meditate the bad away in the world. It literally is a war of attrition. It's numbers. The more people we have who are well formed, the better formed the world is going to be. And I think the happier we have of people, the happier the world's going to be. And so find your perfect self, hack your brain, and I hope you enjoy the journey.
Well, thank you really so much for your time today. This was enlightening as hell for me. I hope you're open to coming on and discussing this in some more detail sometime, because I think there's a lot of unexplored territory here that we could still do at another time. If you'd be open to that, that would be great.
It would be my genuine pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks, Josh, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks for joining me on the porch. I hope you come back soon. Look for all the episodes at anchor.fm/front-porch-podcast. We're also now on Spotify, Breaker, and Google Podcasts. Enjoy the rest of your day.